I cross my face and all myself by the sign of the cross in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, one God, Amen. In the Holy Trinity, believing and trusting myself, I deny you, Satan, in front of my mother, the Holy Church, who is my witness, Saint Mary, Zion, forever. Amen. We thank you, O Lord, and we glorify you. We praise you, O Lord, and we rely on you. We beg you and we beseech you. We worship you and serve your holy name. We bow and kneel down to you, all you to whom all knees should bow and all tongues serve. You are the God of gods and the Lord of the lords and the King of kings, who guides all flesh and all souls. We call you as your holy Son taught us, saying, but when you pray, you shall say, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those that trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us or rescue us from all evil. For thine is the kingdom and power and the glory forever. Amen. By the salutation of Saint Angel Gabriel, O my Lady Mary, I salute you. Thou art virgin in thought and virgin in body, the mother of God, Zion, the Lord of hosts, salutations to you. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of your womb. Rejoice thou who is hailed, the grace from God is with you. Beseech and pray for our mercy to your beloved Son, Jesus Christ, that he may forgive us our sins. Amen. We believe in one God, God the Father, the Almighty, who created heaven and earth and all things seen and unseen. And we believe in one Lord Jesus Christ, the only begotten Son of God, begotten of the Father before all ages. Light of light, true God of true God, begotten, not created, one essence of the Father, by whom all things were made. Who for us men and for our salvation came down from heaven and was incarnate of the Holy Spirit and Virgin Mary, and became man, and who was crucified for us under Pontius Pilate, suffered and was buried, and the third day has rose from the dead, according to the Scriptures, ascended into the heavens. He sits at the right hand of his Father, and he is coming again in glory to judge the living and the dead, whose kingdom shall have no end. Yes, we believe in the Holy Spirit, the Lord, the life-giver, who proceeds from the Father, who is with the Father, the Son is worshipped and glorified, who spoke by the prophets, and in one holy Catholic Apostolic Church, who confess in one baptism for the remission of sins. We look for the dead and the life of the coming. Corner is can't read it. If you notice, that's what I'm just saying.
It's not your fault. I mean, it's not like you should know.
I remember it in 2 languages.
Is the English one?
No. You know what it is.
This is a crazy question my friend asked me. Do you think in Mark or English?
Oh. And sometimes you get it in Greek.
You don't even think in English.
I think you get it. So I don't know that.
You're saying it, but you don't think like
I just scratched out the kids. All right, let's go ahead and get started. If you guys missed last week was a lesson about the Holy Eucharist, and what are some of the things we talked about last week. I do apologize. We did have tablets today, which is strange all the people that are here at this time. That's it. What are some of the things? Maybe a quick review. Oh. What are some of the things we learned last week? We learned about communion. What are some of the other things that we learned about? I mean, specifically. Okay. Yes, forgot. Yes, sir.
Everybody should take communion.
Everybody should take communion. We talked about that for a while. What are some of the other things we talked about? Yes, sir.
Without Holy Communion, you will not enter the kingdom of heaven.
You will not have life, right? Exactly. So you won't have life unless you eat the flesh and blood of Jesus Christ. What are some of the other things we talked about? These are the main ones, yes.
Communion is basically the signature for after all the
Very good. The sacraments of all sacraments, right? So once we do all the other 6, it should be followed up with the sacrament. Not to say that all of them are what's the word I'm looking for? Prerequisite for Holy Communion, with the exception of Holy Baptism. But if we do the other sacraments, then of course we should finalize it with the Holy Eucharist. If you guys need pens, please take some pens. For the people who are not responsible enough to bring some pens, especially in that corner. No, I don't. Oh. Can I get my pen back?
Nobody got
And now, okay, so we talked about what the general understanding of what the Holy Eucharist is about. We talked about what Holy Communion means. We talked about the general aspects of it. What we're doing today is we're going to look at the theology behind Holy Communion. We're going to be talking about a lot of things that are important. And especially, I'll tell you, like, every word that I say from now on is very important, and literally every word matters, right? So we're going to be talking about mystery of incarnation, because at the end of the day, unless you understand the mystery of incarnation, there is no way you can truly appreciate what Holy Communion is. How can you, right? Without understanding Christology, without understanding, again, we're going to ask the question, who is Christ? Where do you guys remember that question from? Last semester, right? We looked at it in detail, who is Christ. But we approached it from an apologistic perspective. I hope I said that word correctly. Now we're going to look at it from a theological perspective, saying who is Christ? As in, is he man or is he God, right? So last time we looked at a few Bible verses and we were like, okay, and we did all that stuff, which was, good. But now we're going into the theology. And of course, we should have seen the 5 pillars of mystery. What are the 5 pillars of mystery?
Holy Trinity. Holy
Incarnation.
Incarnation, communion.
Baptism. Communion.
Resurrection.
Resurrection. You said all of them correctly. So we have the Trinity, Incarnation, Baptism, Communion, and Resurrection. And of course, we should have seen this before we talked about 7 sacraments. That's partly my fault. But at the end of the day, we're going to look at them in detail another day, another course. But when you talk about communion, if you don't understand at least the basics of incarnation, there's no way you can appreciate who you're standing in front of, right? Because I could tell you over and over again, the bread and the wine that are offered in the beginning of liturgy is transfigured into the actual flesh and blood of Christ. I could tell you that. But you won't really appreciate what that means without that full understanding. And I say full in terms of humanly possible to understand it. Obviously, we'll never be able to completely understand an incarnation because it's above the wisdom of man. So, that's that. So today what we're going to do is we're going to kind of review the mystery of incarnation. I'm going to try to do the best overview that I can. Please stay along because, it's very important. So through this mystery, now I'm going to the notes. Through this mystery, we believe that the bread and the wine offered will transfigure to the actual flesh and blood of Christ. We saw this last week in Mystery of Eucharist. We believe that the bread and the wine that are offered in the beginning of liturgy actually transfigure into the actual flesh and blood of Christ. And this view is called the transubstantiation. I practiced that yesterday. Transubstantiation. I hope, whatever. It sounds about right. It's close enough. So I'll talk about what that means in a minute. But first, like I said, to understand the significance behind the mystery, we must ask the question, who is Christ? And this is the question we asked last time. But now we're going to look at it from a theological perspective. Let's go. Adam and Eve. Everything starts with Adam and Eve. Everything. Adam and Eve ate the forbidden fruit. Because they did this, they ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil over the tree of life. Of course, the tree of life is Christ. Christ is life. So they chose the tree of knowledge and, knowledge of good and evil over the tree of life. And it says in Genesis chapter 2, verse 8, in the middle of the garden, he placed the tree of life in the middle of the garden. In the middle of the garden, Genesis chapter 2, verse 8. And the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So you had the tree of life, and then the tree of good and evil, right? This is Genesis chapter 2. Go read it. Like I said, every time you guys read Genesis, you guys usually read it about Adam and Eve, right? Oh, okay, they ate the forbidden fruit, wow. And then you skim through it. But if you look, each time, there are new things that come up that you never heard about, right? This is one of them. And the first time I read it, I was like, no, they told me about this tree, you know? So what they did is they ate from the tree of good and evil over the tree of life. Now, just think about that. So what they really did is they, because this was a sin, they were told not to eat it, and they ate it. They committed an infinite sin against an infinite God. And that's the first fill in the blank. They committed an infinite sin. They chose the tree of knowledge of good and evil over the tree of life. They didn't want life. So what they did is they committed an infinite sin against an infinite God. Of course, God is infinite. He is the true omnipotent, omnipresent, omniscient God, who is the Alpha and the Omega. He's the beginning, he is the end. They committed a sin against him that was infinitely great. Now, sin deserves some type of, there's a wage for sin, right? Like if somebody does something wrong, they got to pay for it. And the wage for sin is death. If somebody has sinned, they must, the consequence is death, right? I mean, that's what the Bible tells us. And sin is also something that infects our souls, right? Sin is not something that's going to, like, if I sin, nothing is going to happen to my flesh, right? Right? Or the consequence of sin might, but really what's hurting is our souls. Like our soul. Imagine your soul has cancer. Now, it turns out when we search the Bible, that our life is actually inside our blood. Right? Leviticus chapter 17, verse 11 says, for the life of the body is in the blood. So, because our life is in the blood, it's in the blood, and because it is our soul that is infected with cancer when we sin, it is our blood that must be purified to clean our soul. You see how that works? Our soul is where? In our blood. Our life is in our blood. When we sin, our life itself has cancer. It is not pure anymore. In order to purify it, you must clean the blood. And the blood that you have is infected, so that blood must be poured, right? It must be shed. And what it says in Hebrews chapter 9, verse 22 is, for without the shedding of blood, there is no forgiveness. Without the shedding of blood, there is no forgiveness. So in the Old Testament, what they had to do, because, if you draw out your blood, you will die. So what they would do is they had animal sacrifices instead. And what they would do is they bring these animals, and the person who committed sin will lay his hand on the animal. Hello, sir, how are you doing? Yes, sir. So he would lay his hand on the animal, and the sin will transpire to the animal. And then they will slay the animal and take the blood out. Because without the shedding of blood, there is no forgiveness. But even that sacrifice wasn't enough. It wasn't sufficient, right? It did not enable anyone to get full forgiveness. And it still required some other covenant, right? So however, the new sacrifices were weak and were not able to provide atonement for mankind. In Hebrews chapter 7, verse 18 through 19, it says, for on the one hand, there is a annulling of the former commandment. What's the former commandment? Don't say the 10 commandments. I'm looking, Hebrews chapter 7, verse 8. That should be Hebrews, not Hebrew. It's not just one guy. It was late last night. I do apologize. We good? Everybody's good? For on the one hand, there's a annulling of the former commandment. What's the former commandment? Huh? Okay, let's read again. For on the one hand, there's an annulling of the former commandment because of its weakness and unprofitableness. For the law was made nothing perfect. So what is it talking about? What's the former commandment? Just sacrifice.
Is that the Abrahamic law?
Which sacrifice
The animal.
Oh, the lamb.
is weak?
The animals.
The animals, not Jesus. Jesus is the one we want, right?
Well, I heard sacrifice.
But you're on the right track. So, he's like, that's all I needed. So here's the thing. The sacrifice of animals was not enough. It was weak, right? So they needed, or we needed, a new sacrifice that would be able to forgive us and purify us once and for all. Because all these poor animals are dying, and yet we still not be forgiven, right? So it's just not a proper way to go about it. Why did that even come up to begin with? It's a very good question, which we can look at another day. But in reality, the truth is, the first commandment is given to mankind to show them they're not worthy. So the first commandment is like, you want to do this on your own. Remember, you chose the tree of knowledge of good and evil over the tree of life. So you're basically saying, I can do this on my own. So he's like, go ahead. Like, here are the rules to get to heaven. Come. The door is open. Come. Right? Whenever you sin, purify yourself. Whenever you do this, do this, do this, do this, do this. If you can't, come to heaven. The door is open. Everybody fell short. Nobody could do it. Right? Like, they still have to sacrifice. He gave them the tools. It's not like God said, you know, you sin, whatever, it's on you, and walked away. That's not what happened. Right? So he opened up the doors. He's like, look, you didn't choose me. But if you want to come back to heaven, I created you in the Garden of Eden. You walked away. Now if you want to come back, come back. The door is open. And they tried, right? And that's what the Old Testament is. For 5,500 years, that's what they were doing. They were trying to come back to the Garden of Eden. They're like, let's get close. They'll fall. They get up, keep walking, they'll fall. Then the covenant that God gave them was not enough. So what needed to occur? A new covenant needed to happen. The covenant made in the New Testament, the new covenant, right? Which is the fact that Christ Jesus came to this world to die for you and I, to give, to redeem us all. So here's what happened, right? When the second covenant happened, clearly, we didn't deserve that. We did nothing to deserve it. Now it was all God. Instead of us coming to Him, what did He do? He came to us. You see? This is and we kind of saw this in last class, if you remember. One of the biggest differences between Islam and Judaism, at least to me it's a huge difference, is according to them, you get to heaven based on works. It's pretty serious. It's pretty serious stuff. It's not about how much you believe Him. It's about what are you doing, right? Like if you're good, then you go to heaven. If you're bad, then you don't. In Christianity, it's... I don't want to say works doesn't matter, because it does, and in the book of James clearly talks about that, but we show our works through our faith. And even if we sin, our faith is what's going to get us into the kingdom of heaven, but a true person with faith will show his works, right? So it's not about the actions alone per se, it's about the faith, and then through your faith, your works are manifested. So going back to this, the first covenant was not enough. It was not strong, so they needed a new covenant. Right, a new covenant. So to restore the souls of mankind from the infinite sin Adam and Eve committed, the infinite God came to this world. Makes sense. Infinite sin, we needed an infinite God to come and rescue us. Makes sense. Let's keep going. Since the divine God does not have blood to shed, remember, God is divine, and divinity by definition cannot have blood. Why? Because blood is contained in flesh, right? So we say he's omnipotent, all-powerful, omnipresent, present everywhere, omniscient, knowing all, Alpha and Omega. Omnipresent means he's present everywhere. If he's present everywhere, and we say he has blood to shed, that means he's contained in a certain place. Versus humanity, right? Human nature is contained. That's why we say the uncontained became contained. In short height and small width. That's what we say. That's what we said. The uncontained became contained when we talk about Christ. So, because Christ, or because God in His divinity does not have blood to shed, He had to unite Himself with the flesh. This is one of the reasons why he united himself. And when we look at the incarnation, we're going to look at other reasons why he united it. But we're talking about Holy Communion and, with the blood. So we're going to be focusing on that today. Again, this is verse everybody needs to know. Each word in this verse matters. Each single word. Each word matters. Okay? Pretty serious. In the beginning was the Word. Compare that with Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. What does it say? In the beginning? No. Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. In the beginning? God created heaven and earth. In the beginning, God created the heaven and earth. John chapter 1, verse 1 says, in the beginning was the Word. Right? In the beginning was the Word. Notice when you compare Genesis and John, what you find is, John is telling you, Word is God, and he doesn't stop there. He didn't say in the beginning was the Word. Hint, hint. By the way, I'm talking about God. That's not what he did. He said in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. Notice this. Word was with God. So now, Word was with God. And he said, and the Word was God. He said, Word was with God. And then he said, the Word was God. Right? He was in the beginning with God. Look what he's doing. John is theologian, right? The verse, something like that. And then in verse 14, he goes all the way down. And he says, and the Word, who? God. Right? Who's there from the beginning, became flesh and dwelt amongst us. That is Christ. The Word who was there in the beginning became flesh and dwelt amongst us. Who? The Word. Where did he come? He was there from the beginning. See him stand up. Right? So, the same God who created the heavens and the earth in Genesis chapter 1, the same God who guided Abraham, the same God who chose Moses, the same God who led Israel into freedom, the same God who is there from the beginning, the same God is the God that came to this world to become flesh. The same God, right? And then we say he united his divinity with humanity. And we're going to look at this in detail another day. Probably each one of these we're going to spend a week on them. It says, when he became man, the unification took place without change, confusion, and if you're in my class, this should not be the first time you're looking at this. It took place without change, confusion, division, and or separation. Some books say mingling, mixture, and all these things. You could keep adding to the list, but these are the ones that we're going to look at. Change, confusion, division, and or separation. What does this mean? When divinity became flesh, what does the word became mean? Literally turn into, right? That's what it means. If you see the word became, we see it in Genesis chapter 19. When we are introduced to Lot and his wife. When his wife, when they were leaving Sodom and Gomorrah, they were told, they were instructed not to look back. Because if they look back, what would happen? They will turn to stone. They will become salt. Alright? So, as they were leaving, Lot's wife decides to turn around. And she became, was she human? No, her substance, and we will look at the word transubstantiation, something like that, later on. But her substance of being a human changed. She is no longer human. She became salt. Right? It's either you're human or salt. Became. Here it says, God became man. You're like, okay. Or God became flesh. Or the word became flesh. Right? So you're like, aha. So that means no more divinity. He became, no more divinity. He became human. 100% human. But then it goes on and then says, he and dwelt amongst us. What does it mean to dwelt amongst us? You come in and you come out, right? It's not permanent. You come in and you come out, right? So you have one which means permanently change, one which means coming in and coming out. When you put the two together, you get unification. One cancels out the other because the word that John is looking for doesn't exist, right? To truly describe what took place, the unification. It doesn't exist. So he said, he became flesh and dwelt amongst us. You see that? So what does it mean? It means it happened without change. Without change meaning it was not like the story of Lot and his wife. His divinity did not change to become human because he said he dwelt amongst us. Right? There's no way he could dwell. There's no way he could say that if his divinity is changed and he's completely flesh. In order to say he dwelt amongst us, that means he's able to leave again. But if you're going to say he left, he said he became flesh. He can't leave. You see? So the two together, combined, you get unification. Then, not only did it happen without change, it happened without confusion. What does confusion mean? Think of milk and coffee, right? You have milk and you have coffee. When you put the milk inside the coffee, the milk gives up its nature and absorbs the nature of coffee. Nacho? Nacho? You have milk, you have coffee. The nature of milk gives up its nature and adopts the nature of coffee. The same way the nature of coffee gives up its nature and adopts the nature of milk. Confusion. The two are confused, right? So you don't have white, you don't have black, you have gray, right? Or whatever you want, brown. I don't know. You have grayish brown. Don't correct me. So this is what happens. So at the end of the day, you don't have completely dark coffee, you don't have white milk, you have something in between, right? And when you taste it, you can taste. You don't be like, oh, there goes the milk, there goes the coffee. You don't do that, right? Like it's one taste, but it's like it gives up its nature. So it happened without confusion. So it wasn't like, and there's this view, we'll look at it in the future, but there's a view that says when divinity became flesh, it swallowed up the nature of humanity. We don't say that. Or divinity gave up its power and became human. We don't say that. We say he was fully divine, fully human. Okay? It happened without division. What does division mean? Imagine, for example, what's the best analogy for division? Water and oil. You have water and you have oil, right? And then when you put water and oil, it separates. I forget which one is on top. I think the oil. Oil is on the bottom. No, it's on the top. Come on. So, you guys don't know chemistry. Clearly, because the oil has more density and stuff. So, don't question me. So the oil's on top and the water's on the bottom. And you can see the difference, right? It's divided. So you have oil here, and then you have water here, and they're clearly divided, right? Unification is not like that. It happens without division. He became flesh. He became flesh. He didn't say he was alongside flesh. That's not what he said. He said he became flesh, right? So without division, without separation means, think about a pen. You have a pen, you have like body of pen, and the actual stuff that, what is it called? It's not the ink is the color. Cartridge. Hard word to say. So you have the body of the pen, and you have the ink, and then you have the ink. So then you can take the body out and separate it in, and take it out, separate it in, divide it, separate it in, right? That's separation. So it's not like that. It's not like we look at some of the teachings that occurred in the 4th century, which say divinity came and like stayed Mahadar. You know what Mahadar is? You know what Mahadar is? No. Oh, everybody's sleeping? It is extra hot. That's the problem. Yeah, it's extra. No, not you. Not you. Mm-mm. No. Come on, you guys. We gotta finish early today. We gotta. Woo. Okay. You guys, we gotta get through this. So it happened without separation. Separation like a pen. You put it in, take it out, put it in, whatever. You guys get the idea, right? So that it's not like that. And there's some views that say divinity came, and Mahadir is like a closet. What? Not a closet. What is it? Like a bin, right? Like where you put your shirts and stuff in. What is it called? A drawer. Thank you. My English is limited. I speak no Englishes. So I like how people open the door, right? Just open it. Yeah, like it doesn't, it's okay. It's okay. I'm not mad at you. Please. So, you guys, concentrate. You have drawer. So, you know how you put your clothes in and you take clothes out? Some people say divinity came in and divinity came out. People say that. But if divinity came in and divinity came out, how can we say the word became flesh? Remember, the word became flesh, right? So each word matters, and that's why we say it happened without change, confusion, division, and separation. Hence, after unification, we do not speak of two natures. After unification, we do not speak of two natures. We call it a hypostatic union. Hypostatic union. In order to explain this, Saint Cyril, Kyrillos by my heart, I don't know in English, Cyril, Kyrillos, and 425. In the 5th century, Saint Kyrillos said the following. He came up with an analogy in order to describe the unification of Christ and man. It's called the ignited iron analogy. It is the following, and I just copy-pasted the whole thing because I don't want to make it up, right? Because it's very important stuff. Iron is cold, it says, in its nature, but it comes sizzling after being united with fire. This signifies that the Logos is hypostatically united with the human flesh while it's still divine. Okay? After united, it's still divine. Here, the integrity of the two elements is understood, but one can never separate the fire from the warmed iron, nor consider them to be two. When the blacksmith hammers and forms the iron, this is very important stuff. Listen. When the blacksmith hammers and forms the iron with an anvil, or whatever that word is. Huh? Anvil. The formless flame, think about this. The formless flame also takes form in accordance with the shape of the metal, but it's only the metal which is actually finished. Okay? Through the fire is also hammered together with it. Likewise, the Orthodox Church professed that God died in his flesh. God died in his flesh. God died in his flesh. Despite the fact that divinity is immortal. Okay? So what this is saying is, you have fire. If a blacksmith goes to fire and starts hammering it, will the shape of the fire change?
Yeah. Of the fire?
Of the fire.
It would take shape.
That's what it didn't.
Listen, everybody listen to what I am saying.
In accordance with the shape of the metal.
When the hammersmith goes to the fire, I didn't say anything about metal, I didn't say anything about unification, I didn't say anything. When he goes to the fire, and he takes a hammer and hits the fire, will the shape of the fire change? No. The answer is very simple. No, it will not. Right? Fire is not something it's not even a gas, it's not liquid, it's not matter, it's not even a gas. It's a process. Right? So it's not something like you can really be like, oh man, I contained it. No, you can't. Right? Fire. When the hammersmith goes to the metal or the iron, starts hitting it, will it change its form? Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. This is the easy stuff. If you guys are struggling with this, I'm worried, frankly. The hard part. You united the iron with the fire. You united the iron with the fire. When you're hitting that substance that's in front of you, what's changing its form? The fire or the metal? Both. as the metal is changing its shape, because the fire is united with it, it's going to come along with the metal. You see? Through the metal, you get into the fire. This is huge. Why? Because when Christ died on the cross, it's not just, I used to think for a long time it was just like his blood. Oh, because he's flesh, yeah, he bled, and blood is shed. That's what it says, Hebrews chapter 9, verse 22. Without the shedding of blood, there is no forgiveness, right? Oh, yeah, he was human, his blood came out. No. We do not speak of two natures after unification. One nature. His divinity, his humanity. Even his divinity bled because of his flesh. Right? We can't separate the two. Christ bled. Who died? God died. Right? Through his flesh. Through his flesh. This is huge stuff. The one who doesn't die, died because he became flesh. Does that make sense? This is huge stuff. I mean, this is what got people talking for a long time. I mean, this is huge, right? Why is this? Clearly, this is very important to your religion. Clearly. But you might wonder how this is connected to, there's seats over here, by the way. Yeah, these people are standing up just because they're weird. You might be asking yourself, how is this connected to Holy Communion? How is this connected to Holy Communion? We get it, okay, Christ is united, all these things, but how is it related with Holy Communion? Here's how it's related. After unification, we do not speak of two natures. We speak of one nature. That means when we say the bread and the wine that is offered in Holy Liturgy changes to the actual flesh and blood of Christ, what we're saying is that flesh and that blood that transfigures is the blood of God. Right? Like, it is united. You can't separate it like divinity, humanity. It is God in front of you. The same God that created the heavens and the earth. The same God who is there from the Old Testament is there when you're ready to accept Holy Communion. If that's not a big deal, I don't know what is. Somebody once said, if I got a chance to see Christ just one last time, I promise I'll believe in it. He said it happens every Sunday. Just come. It happens every Sunday he comes. You're standing before a God and you're looking at him. It says in 1 John chapter 1. Right? When John was talking about Christ, he said, "We proclaim to you the one who existed from the beginning, whom we've heard and seen." Notice what he says. This is John again. The same John that we saw in John chapter 1, verse 1. Now this is the epistle, not the gospel, the epistle, 1 John chapter 1, verse 1. He said, "We proclaim to you the one who existed from the beginning." How did this one start? In John chapter 1, verse 1, in the gospel, he said, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. In the beginning was the Word." Now he said, the Word was with God, and the Word is God. Now he says, "We proclaim to you the one who existed from the beginning, God," right? "Whom we've heard and seen." We have heard and we have seen him. And then he says, "We saw him with our own eyes and touched him with our own hands." Who's he talking about? Jesus Christ. We saw him. We touched him. And now we get to do the same thing 2,000 years later. We didn't miss out. Right? We're still standing before him. We're still touching him. We still see him. That's amazing. And we're united with him when we take Holy Communion. I mean, Holy Communion is one of these sacraments that we can talk about it over and over, but I don't think a lot of people will completely appreciate it until we look at the holy mystery of incarnation. And this is why I keep saying, without understanding the mystery of incarnation, there is no way you can appreciate mystery of Holy Communion. There's no way. There's no way. Because we could, somebody could teach you the bread is going to transfigure to the blood and flesh of Jesus Christ. But if you don't know who Christ is, then that means nothing, right? Oh, okay, wow, that's wonderful. Wow, okay, the blood. flesh of Jesus Christ, right? But if you understand mystery of incarnation, that means God, without changing his divinity, became united with humanity. And the same God that existed in the beginning is whom I'm standing in front of right now, right? And that's who I'm putting into my body. And that's who I'm being united with. That's amazing. That's amazing. Why would anyone not want to take this sacrament each Sunday? Why would anyone stay away from the sacrament? To be united, you have an opportunity to touch God himself. That is amazing. So, through this mystery, we believe that the bread and the wine offered will transfigure to the actual flesh and blood of Christ without separating the divinity and humanity. We say the body and the flesh of Christ. Right? So when we say it changes to the flesh, we're not just talking about his human side, we're talking about the divinity and the humanity. Makes sense. We're good on this. And we believe in, again, what's known as transubstantiation. Now, where does this word come from? What does it mean? Trans means changing thoroughly. Substance means that of which a thing consists. Do not confuse substance with descriptions, right? If let's say somebody is wearing a hat, and we say, what are some of the characteristics of a hat? We say, blue. It's circle. It's whatever, right? And you start. No, that's not the substance. Substance is itself. I don't want you to describe it to me. A lot of you talk about substance and they describe it. Not description. It's like the hat itself, right? That's what substance is, right? So transubstantiation is not just talking about the color and the stuff like that. It's talking about the substance itself. The substance offered, that is the bread and the wine. The substance of the bread and the wine will thoroughly change to the flesh and the blood of Jesus Christ. It will. The substance itself will change. This is the mystery. I always say this. After we talk about mystery of Holy Communion, it's funny, right? Especially if you talk to Protestants, it's hilarious. You tell them that, and we believe like the actual flesh and blood is coming. And I'm like, wow, that's amazing. But clearly it's not the actual flesh, right? And I'm like, no, you're not getting it. Like it's the actual flesh. They're like, yeah, but it's not the actual flesh, right? No, it's the actual flesh. The substance changes. It's not just I don't know how to describe it. The substance of the bread changes to God, right? To Christ. This is huge. Like, this is huge every time I think about it. This is a big deal. Big deal. Big, right? That's why we have to think about what we're doing at church. That's why when we talk about the Holy Communion, we have to take it very seriously. That's why it's important. Like, we're going to take God inside our body, right? That's why we have to, like, think about, okay, I need to take this. This is life. Like, I really have to take this. I can't stay away from God. And when we take it, we got to take it seriously. We got to take it seriously. So, when one partakes in the Eucharist, I should have said Holy Eucharist, the flesh and the blood of Christ, fully divine and fully man, is united with our flesh and blood. This purifies our soul. Remember, when we sin, cancer grows in our life. You understand what I'm saying? Cancer, right? Sin is growing in our life. In order to